Coffee is grown really poorly, and then what's done to that coffee, depending on how we roast it or over roasted, it grows. So depending on what herbicides, pesticides, really important things that we have to recognize is the distinction between marketing messages and actual information that is going to be valuable for us. Marketing is this full-on effort at every step in our day to make somebody think that a product is part of the desired solution that they have. That the key thing for us to focus on here is...
Buddy, welcome back to this. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths, and today's episode is another business athlete episode, all designed to help support your pursuit of your optimal performance. Today, we're doing that through the lens of personalized nutrition with my longtime friend who I've recently reconnected with, Ashley Koff, RD, of Better Nutrition Programs. So Ashley, thanks so much for coming on today.
I love it. I'm so happy to reconnect, and I love seeing you in this space because this is a really important, the whole concept of performance and not bifurcating it to one area of our life is just awesome. So yeah, I love what you're focusing on.
Oh, thank you so much. So folks, I always tell you how I know my guests. And so Ashley and I go back to a client that I had numerous years ago, too many years ago, which was QVC. And they had a post that my team was working on, which was in the food space, David Venable. I haven't been a QVC watcher, so I can't say if he's still on, but that was our connection point. And I remember, Ashley, we were looking for people who were truly authentic in this space of food with an air to wellness, but again, that authenticity without that air of almost, I told you, or, that kind of beautified version of it. And again, you always come across to me as being so real. And I just want to mention that. And, it's something that I was very drawn to. So folks, that's how we know each other.
Yeah, and I think he is. He still pops up on one of my, I'm not great with some of the social, on my side, but I feel like just recently he popped up. And I appreciate that, this has been a passion of my own, and my own pursuit. But one of the things I've learned, it's 25 years now, and working in this field, and there's no right answers. So I think that anyone that comes forward with an answer with hey, this should be even a lab value. I was just having a conversation with a practitioner and I was like, yeah, but we can't state that just gives us good information. And then we, each of us are in our bodies that we start to experiment and we see how our body responds. And so it's always a partnership for me with a patient or in conversation when we're trying to figure out how to do something. So I think the realness comes from the fact that it can't be perfected. There isn't any one size fits all or even one size fits many, despite what the government and others would have you think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really what I've learned from following you, but also our recent chat was that's really the lens that you take with the Better Nutrition Program is exactly that, So again, I think it's that personalized approach to it. So talk to us about that. And who do you work with? You mentioned clients. Who do you work with and how do you work with them?
Sure. Well, for a number of years, decades, I had a private practice and I would always work with patients of practitioners. I happen to be based in Los Angeles. If you're familiar with Los Angeles, I had a Beverly Hills office and a Santa Monica office because people don't typically cross the 405. So you have to serve both populations. And that sort of had me ending up from there, kind of working with people from all over the world. But I always was working in collaboration with other practitioners. And one of the things at the time that I really focused on was personalized. And the main reason, if I go back, is that I had anything but personalized care for years, whether it was a desire as a kid to lose weight, later on to realize that it was digestive stuff, kind of mental health, all of these different things. And it wasn't until I took a personalized approach to my own health that I was able to be more thoughtful, intentional, and see the results, that I was looking for. So personalization has always been my thing. It just was something that I could only do person to person to person. And that's expensive. And that also means I actually have to do that all the time. So fast forward, and I really wanted to figure out a way to change healthcare in this country. So that's just a small goal. And my goal there is to really be on the prevention side, and also the prevention of things getting worse. So even if you already have a disease, how can we put you into disease reversal or managing your disease and avoiding progression? And so I wanted to scale personalization. And so what I realized was that if we are able to ask the right questions and develop this collaboration between practitioners, coaches, and an individual, we can actually figure out how your body responds. And that's dynamic. That's always changing, but we can figure out how your body's responding and sort of build I like to call it a roadmap or a plan or a training plan if we're talking to athletes. That is, it has to be iterative or dynamic. So, like if you have an injury, we have to pivot in a different direction. We also have to recognize that if your life or your travel or, any of these other things are increasing in intensity or different, like they're going to cause pivots. So I figured that we were able to do that to scale if we had the right people and the ability to ask the right questions. And that's what I wanted to bring to individuals. I wanted people who are investing their time, their money, their emotions, and their effort to be able to hit the bullseye more often. And in order to do that, it required taking this personalized approach. So that's what we've created at the Better Nutrition Program. And today we do that for individuals. We also work in collaboration with practitioners on their patients. And then we also work with companies where they've said, we have all these programs that our employees have access to, but they're really looking for a more personalized solution. And so we've come in and been able to offer that, things like continuous glucose monitoring or digestive tune-up or, even genetics and looking at nutrigenomics there. So a long answer, but it's all about personalization. And B&P, so my company is the Better Nutrition Program. B&P stands for Better, Not Perfect, which goes to the start of our conversation. So our ethos is, how do we help you every day identify your better choices and learn to make them more often? Because knowing what they are is a horse of a different color than making them more often. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think there's so much information, also confusion in this space. And I shared with you the whole concept of business athlete. And I know again, as you said, you work with business people, you also work with athletes. And I think it's really interesting in both arenas. We are looking for, to be performing at our optimal. And I think that when we can think of ourselves as that as leaders, it's really like, how can you be present for yourself and others in order to, and sometimes that is like taking extra decisions out of the way or taking things where it just is onslaught of confusion. I think taking it out of the way. And it's always been kind of funny or I guess not funny is not the right word, but kind of weird to me that like we literally get coaching and guidance on so many things in life, but yet fueling ourselves and figuring out what we actually need is trial and error over years. Or you find someone who could actually help you figure out, as you said, like the path that's actually fit to you. So this has been something that's on my mind. So that's why I'm so drawn to what you've been doing in your personalized approach. I just love it.
Thank you. I want to break those into 3 areas. So the first is what I reference as the epidemic of infobesity. So we are taking, no matter your health status, one of the greatest things that will negatively impact your health is stress. And the stress of taking in excess information is so high. And that's really regardless of health status. And so one of the things that I do a lot of times is just help people vet their info load. So having somebody that knows who you are today and how your body is functioning and is able to evaluate that really helps you just kind of like dull all the other information that may be out there. Even if you're reading something fabulous or you're listening to a cool podcast or somebody's talking about something. I'll give an example that makes me laugh a lot, but totally recognizing why this happened. Years and years ago, there was a research study that came out about how fish oil may be problematic for prostate health. And I was reviewing the study real quickly because it came out. This was a different media era where we didn't have things like coming out like with the headline before the study was even available, and et cetera. This was at least 2 decades ago. But I was reading it and I had a couple of interviews. So I was doing some TV and radio interviews, and they were coming to me very, like exactly as you said, just like, can you kind of cut to the chase, tell us the real, what should we know about it? Well, I came back to my email inbox and phone messages, and it like I had blown up, and I was like, "Oh, this is a big one. Yeah, I'm really going to have to get in there and talk to men and help them understand, and the women that care for men, etc." But the funny part to me was the majority of people who had reached out to me about this research study were women who had actually said to me, "Should I still be taking my fish oil?" Now, let's just unpack this. This was a study about fish oil and prostate health. Women, we don't have prostates. So there's no correlate, like there's nothing in that part. Like this is as far off the dartboard as possible for you. And yet the significance, the attention that was given to this study and what was extrapolated, and it turned out to be a very poor study, and the interpretations were not even positive for. So I want to be clear in case anyone's listening, men and fish oil and all of that stuff. We need our omega-3s. It's great for prostate health. And we need all of the omegas that are in fish. So at that moment in time, I realized I needed to do something very important and make sure that as a practitioner, I was always playing that role of helping somebody vet the information and basically saying to them, you don't actually need to take this in. So one of the spaces that can be really helpful from a coaching standpoint is to evaluate, and this is an exercise I do with businesses all the time. I literally have them go through an exercise of evaluating the sources of information around your health and your health decisions. And we identify how, like, first of all, do you have one that is hyper personalized, that knows who you are in your body today, et cetera? And if you don't, you might need one. And then what are all the other sources? And look, if you love to, listen to podcasts, read books, read magazines, watch, scroll through Instagram, it's fine. But they need to be relegated to a very small amount of attention that you actually give and allow your brain to take in. So that's super important, because when our brains are overloaded, just like if we took in, I was just talking about fats, if we took in a bunch of really healthy fats, like if you eat 4 servings of wild salmon, your system is still overloaded, despite the fact that one would probably argue that wild salmon is a very healthy and good for us. So with information, we have to do the same thing. So that's one area of what you were saying. I think that's really important and valuable. It's a valuable exercise to do. And then to identify who's going to be my source. And it doesn't mean that person needs to be your knowledge source for everything, but it does mean it can be somebody good and helpful for you, in terms of vetting it. And one of the key distinctions in there is also, does somebody know who you are today? And that's often like, do I have the right lab work? Do I have the information that helps me understand, how my body's performing today? So that's part one of this 3-part of what you were saying, because it's overwhelming, right? So the second part is, you and I both share from a background standpoint. So I started my career off even before my what would technically be considered my professional career, because it's when I left college. But even in college, at age 5, as my mom will remind me, I love selling stuff to people. So I am a marketer, like at the core. I'm not a nutritionist at the core. I'm a marketer at the core. I love that part. And so when I ended up going to work in advertising. I sold sugared cereals, probably Conflict Diamonds. I sold toilet paper. I sold hair color. And what I learned in that time period was, how do we help people, what is marketing? And marketing is this full-on effort at every step in our day to make somebody think that a product is part of the desired solution that they have, like of their goal on that part. So if that's the case, I want to remind us that in the food and the health space, there is literally a publicist and a marketing agency behind every ingredient, as well as different products. So we have like the blueberry and the acai are fighting against each other. We have the almond and the walnut who are fighting against each other. We have omega-3 supplements that are trying to tell you that they're better for you or a better source than that wild salmon. And we have that wild salmon in a can as opposed to the wild salmon that's frozen. So it's overwhelming in that space. So one of the other really important things that we have to recognize, and it's really difficult, is the distinction between marketing messages and actual information that is going to be valuable for us. And many of us are taking in marketing messages, which, oh, by the way, are delivered by people sharing their own experiences with a product, either in a sponsored or, unfortunately, in a not sponsored way, even on social media, right? So if your friend comes to you and tells you that she's selling a skincare, and you ask her about that skincare and she talks to you and tells you all about why it's great for her, And you guys have two totally different types of skincare. Well, if you buy it from her, that's on you. Like, you have two totally different types of skincare. It gets a little bit more challenging when we move into the space of supplements and foods and, and things like that. So the marketing part, so we've got information, then we have marketing and recognizing how marketing is actually part of that overwhelm that happens with information. And we have to be really careful with that. All right. The third area is the opportunity. So the opportunity there is to actually take a proactive approach to yourself and identify what your goals are. I'm pretty obsessed right now with Dr. Peter Attia's centenarian decathlon topic, which looks at, hey, if we all just thought we were going to live to 100, what do we want to be able to do between age 90 and 100? Like, what are the 10 top things? Like, for me, I'd want to make sure my dog's 70 pounds. I'd want to make sure I can walk my dog. I want to be able to need to lift him. I might want to be able to, I enjoy, kayaking. So would I be able to do that at 90? Like, just interesting things, to think about. And then sort of planning your exercise associated with that. And if we take a similar approach to the bodily functions, brain health, digestive health, heart health, all these other things, we can sort of back up and look where we need to invest right now from a performance standpoint. And when you look at somebody as the business athlete, which, by the way, I consider myself that. I'm a novice athlete, but I love to train like an athlete. I love to, I'm working on a sprinting thing, or there are different, I always love to challenge myself and, played sports. And I'm a business person. And so I need to build a plan that helps me understand how I'm going to achieve my performance goals across the board, and also gives me alerts and times to check in. So a lot of what I do for individuals is have them do, just like you would do with your business, a quarterly check-in. So if I'm checking in on, my P&L, then I should be checking in on my functional P&L in my body, and understand, is my digestion, is my hydration, is my sweet taste buds, and some of these. So we take a very business approach, like the business of your health as an athlete or somebody who trains like an athlete or just defines, me. So anyway, I said it was a long answer. It's in 3 parts, but I love this, again, is why I'm so grateful you're having me here, and want to encourage people to think about this just in a different way, which is we aren't 2 different people. We aren't the business person and the athlete, and also the mom, and also, et cetera. It really is, who are we? And then who's going to be the best source of information to help me identify what I need, which may be somebody who's more diagnostic. That might be somebody like myself as a dietitian or a physician or some collaboration. But then who's going to actually do that transition? And this is where 90% of people don't get outcomes for their investment, or don't get great ROI, as we like to talk about in business, is that they go through all of that and figure out everything they should be doing. And then they don't have the support to figure out how to make it, what I like to say, deliciously doable, or just doable, budget-wise, time-wise, et cetera. And that's where coaching really can come in and be strategic, a strategic support for you. Which is why we put our whole system together to offer the analysis and also the coaching support, and look at that, from an ongoing optimization. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad that you went through all of those things, because it definitely speaks to, I think, these pain points that we have, we as, myself, the audience, that, again, if we don't have that expertise that you do, we're literally left with all of this information. And I think what people tend to do is try to shortcut, because we're most of the time, a lot of us are looking for the shortcuts things. How do I make it easier for myself? And a lot of times that's, I'll follow this fad. I'll go keto. I'll go vegan. And again, I think, vegan's probably a bad one because of the ethical element of it.
No, it's totally right there. And I'll explain why. Don't call it a bad one, but yeah, it's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an example of, I think we try to shortcut. But again, if we're doing it because it just sounds sexy or our friends are doing it, it's that element of knowing that our bodies are so unique, each person. That I have no idea. And listen, I have tried everything under the sun, I think, as I'll try this fad, I'll try that fad coming up. Several years ago, I was like, enough. I'm just going to go middle of the road, try to be as balanced as possible. But again, I say that from experience. We try to do those things, But again, I have no idea if it's actually going to work for me. So I think if we can, hearing you say all this is like, there's actually an answer out there that can help simplify it and shorten that time frame to figure out what is going to work for us.
Yeah. So I think if we were to ask any athlete if we could make you more efficient and effective in reaching your goals by altering your training plan, they would say, yes, thank you. And how do I do it? Right. They, though, us would say that. If we could say to any business person, we can help you more efficiently and effectively reach your goals, they'd be like, all right, let's lay out the plan. Let's measure it. Let's continue to follow it. And yes, let's go through that. And we're just not doing it in healthcare. Like we're just not, and really importantly too, we're not doing it in as it relates to prevention or one of the areas that I'm obsessed with is the difference between optimal health and what one might call sufficient health or quote unquote normal health. So when you look at certain labs, they might tell you like, oh, those levels are normal. I was just reviewing this for a guy. He's like, his cholesterol levels, the doctor was like, well, your cholesterol levels are normal. Well, this is normal. This is normal. That heat that you're experiencing on a daily basis doesn't really have anything to do with any of your levels. And I was like, wait a second, that's not optimal. That's not optimal. And you didn't test this. So that heat that you're like internal heat for a man, like an otherwise deemed healthy man, like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you breaking out into a sweat or feeling that, et cetera? So that we need to, like, if we're driving towards optimal, if you're a business person or an athlete, like you recognize that. I also think it's really important to borrow something from business and athlete, which is it's not about goal setting. So it's not about saying, let me lose 10 pounds or let me get my cholesterol to this level or my blood sugar to this level. What we really want to think about so what is my ultimate goal? All of us have the same ultimate goal. We want to be healthy. If we're healthy, we want to stay that way. And if we are trying to get healthy, we want to get there and then stay that way. And so if that's the ultimate goal, then we need to do a series of experiments that give us feedback about how our body responds and then determine, do we keep investing behind that or do we not? Which, by the way, would be the exact same thing if I was doing a marketing plan for a business or if I was training to try to improve my speed or getting a team together to try to play, to win a basketball game or anything else. So we have the models there. We're just not applying them, to nutrition and health in the same way. And I think one of the things that I particularly focus on in this experimentation space is I also like doing experiments because for some reason, nutrition and health is one of the areas that we tend to misown the concept of failure. So for me as a kid, I was just bad at dieting. I was like, I'm good at a lot of things. Like, I'm just bad at this. I'm bad at my weight. I'm bad at I'm a failure. So it was just, I tried Jenny Craig. My friends did really well on it. I didn't do well on it. I tried Weight Watchers. My friends did that. Like these days I might try keto, and I'm a failure, right? Instead of turning around and saying, hey, that wasn't designed for me. Or what I ultimately found out was, hey, Ashley, legitimately nothing is going to work for you until you undo what years of antibiotics did to your system. So until I repaired my digestive system, nothing was going to happen on that part. And today we know, we have examples. Probably one of the ones I'm most interested in today is the medications that go by Ozempic and Wagovy, the semaglutide injections, which are mimicking a hormone, and we're taking them in. Well, our digestive system produces that hormone. And so what we've identified is if that hormone is in the bloodstream is the issue, like if getting that hormone in is helping us with weight, with our weight is helping us with our blood sugar, then shouldn't we explore why is our body not producing optimal levels? And it doesn't mean we don't use the medication. It just means it's an and. And so we're not looking in the right places. We're doing a lot of band-aiding. And when we don't look in the right places, we don't identify things like, oh, maybe my potassium levels are insufficient. By the way, most of us are insufficient in potassium, which impairs the ability of that production of that GLP-1 hormone, which is what these medications are. Or my digestive system doesn't have the right blend of probiotics, or I'm not getting in the right types of polyphenols, or the injuries that I've done to my digestive tract just mean that it's not efficiently, doing this work. So, I take a very business athlete approach to optimizing human health. And I feel like, that the key thing for us to focus on here is if you aren't seeing results in an efficient way, if you don't experience that efficiency, you probably don't have somebody that's looking under the hood that's saying, hey, how are you designed? And one of the things I shared with you, we can dive into is also, we're now in a place where nutrigenomics and looking at our genes, our unique, how we're designed and how we function. We now have that to layer in. It doesn't tell us directly what to do. If people are using it that way, it's absolutely wrong. And we should never make a decision off of one gene, even something like ApoE or BRCA or anything else. Like, we really need to look in and understand how we're designed. But it does give somebody like myself really good information about how you might be different, even than your sister or your brother or your parent, where family history is often talked about as sort of, a key factor. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's funny because even as you're talking through all of it really does reveal/stress the complexity of this. I mean, of course, the human body is very complex. And so we can actually do ourselves a favor to not have to make it our additional job as not being professionals in this space to try to figure it out for ourselves. And again, like, go through all of these trials and tribulations of this, that or that fad. I was thinking about this in preparation for this. Remember that fad for a while? People were doing that Soylent instead of eating throughout the day. They would just drink that shake.
Yeah.
And, so it's like, again, we kind of look back on these things, or the back of the day where it was like fat-free and all of these things that come up. But it actually feels like such a relief to think about having almost a partner in crime who can help you figure it out on a daily basis. And again, as a business leader, take some of those additional decisions away. It's kind of like, I have kind of a work uniform so that I don't have to think about that. Or I'm guilty of eating certain things over and over, and I'm a perfect candidate for what you're doing. And it's because I don't have to make an additional decision for that. So I just want to pause and stress that for the audience, that again, this is a way to kind of cut through some of that, and again, get to the solutions and the ability to be performing at our optimal more quickly and less painfully, I'll say.
Yeah. And I'll say two things. One, the critique, or I love criticism. And so, because it always helps me be better, that one of the criticisms that I've often received in the past, and even, when I was doing TV or programs or, different things, like, Ashley, it's so complicated. And it's like, so it is complex, and the human body is complex, but it's also actually, when you do this the right way, it actually becomes so simple, because it becomes really clear where you don't need to pay attention. So the reason that I do experiments is to find out, like, if you're absorbing water, we do our hydration test, drink 8 to 10 ounces of water and see if you have to pee within 2 hours. If that comes back and you're peeing and like after 2 hours and we're fine, like, I don't need to focus on absorption. So then we just continue doing what you're doing. But if that's not working, it means anything that you're eating right now, the nutrients, a good percentage of those nutrients are not as easily going with the water into your cells. Hello, like, I don't care how many kale salads you're eating if the nutrients from the kale aren't getting it. So if your digestion and your absorption aren't working properly, we need to work on that part. So, making things more simple. Now there's that. Then unfortunately, there's the oversimplification. So a lot of companies, billions of dollars are being spent today to market personalization to you. Almost all of those don't deliver on true personalization. So there are companies that will tell you to wear a continuous glucose monitor. And what they're directing you to do is to look at food, nutrition, and how it impacts your blood sugar. It also is giving you a sense that your blood sugar number should be in a certain range. So yes to all of that. However, there are over 40 factors that impact your blood sugar. 10 of them are nutrition. So if you're focusing on your food or your nutrition, great. Like, if you're evaluating alcohol, if you're, all these other things. But what about your fitness? What about your, your sleep? What about your labs? Like, what about nutrient insufficiencies, excesses, your medication, like all of these other things? So, in that regard, and if we just look at a continuous glucose monitor, or we just look at a digestive test, and we don't look at you as a whole person, we're very likely to do things impersonalized, which keeps you continuing to chase and invest resources and not be as efficient. Because remember, I want, the efficient outcomes. So that's number one. The second is, I always call him my yoga instructor. He's a Peloton guy. I do Peloton yoga with this guy, and he says, I make suggestions, you make decisions. I love what you said about eating things on the regular. So for some people, having the exact same breakfast or, doing different things, it's like, okay. And then I turn around and I look at you nutritionally and say, well, here's what your body needs. Here's what you are taking in. Let's figure out what are the suggestions, the ways that we can now help you take in what your body needs. And sometimes I had a great example of a guy. I said, look, you can eat dark chocolate. You could have hemp seeds. Like I was trying to increase his magnesium intake and I showed him where he needed to be. He looked at me, he's like, Ashley, it's not going to happen. Can I take a supplement? I was like, absolutely. So let's go. He's like, it just literally, I'm not going to do it. Please tell me that. Don't tell me you're going to go, don't tell me, Shauna, you're going to make a smoothie for, superfood smoothie for breakfast. And then lunch, you're going to have, the most diverse salad and dinner, all this other stuff. No, if that's not going to happen. And for many of us in the business world, we are traveling or we want to prioritize time for our workouts and not necessarily for food preparation. So wear the training wheels, order food, get food delivered, but know what you need to get in and then consistently evaluate it on a quarterly basis. That's going to be, it's just a more efficient way to do all of this.
Yeah. It makes so much sense. And I think so much about this has to do with your mindset and how you're going to approach something. And again, I think that's a lot to do with that connection between the business athlete. It's because, again, you said earlier, an athlete, if you say, here, I can help design this system so that you can perform better, hell yes. Business person, again, is probably going to say hell yes too. And it's because it is literally that grit, that determination to better, to continually improve. And again, I think if we're highly functioning leaders in the business world, we're going to have that same mindset too. And I think we have to be in this arena, be a bit selfish about that, because what are the things that are going to help us do that? I can guarantee that drinking nothing but coffee all day long. I used to work with someone who was like, yeah, I don't eat until 3 p.m. And I mean, my jaw would drop. I would be on the floor by then, And so again, if someone could say, oh, well, but that works for that person. And I'm like, really? So again, I'm pausing just to say, there really is this connection. It is around this mindset. And I think if we keep that in mind, then it starts to make sense of why do we actually need some help in this space? And how can this actually, really just fit into our days?
Yeah. And, in business, one of the things that I've learned, I was just having this conversation, a little bit of unsolicited business advice from a corporate client the other day. And I said, look, there are 3 ways you can get to that result. That's what we need to recognize. And so if there are 3 ways, let's pick a path, but let's evaluate that. And so, for example, if one of the things that I love learning about from genetics is how is your body, I learned for myself that my body is designed for power, for strength, for endurance, a little bit less so for endurance, but I'm definitely that, which is great because I love that. And I've also known about myself that day in and day out, I can train. Now, what I also happened to just learn was, despite all of that, I have on the flame scale, which is this little flicker all the way to a flame, you really actually can't even see the flicker in terms of how my body uses energy. So my body it just stores. It is just there, which is great. If I lived 200 years ago, I could survive, out in the field, I just whatever needed. I don't have to worry about food availability or whatever. That totally sucks now because I love to eat food, and for a lot of years, I would try to train or just kind of compensate for, especially on the road, if we were up late eating, I would wake up early to make sure I got the workout in. And I was like, ooh, this balance is going to work out. And I was not doing right by my body. And so when you look at these and you learn and you understand how your body's designed, some of us, and especially, when you look at the athlete side, some of us really need recovery. And that recovery is different forms. It may be active recovery. It may be, I'm going to do better with 2 days between an intense workout, and all these other things. And when we look at genetics and we start to understand that, we can then design your nutrition to efficiently support you. But we can also, from a business standpoint, also design your business day to support you better. So, if I knew that for me, on those nights that we have, and this is how I structure it now. First of all, almost no one is getting me to a late evening meal. Like, I mean, I don't even know what you'd have to be offering me, like, especially in a workspace. I'm like, I'm not going to show up. But, like as a speaker, I'm like, I'll speak at the cocktail hour. Like, I'm just not going to be your closing act. Like, it's not going to happen. Right. So there's that side of it. But the later that things happen, especially like, say, with time zone changes or whatever, then I shift what my morning is like, because I know what I need to do to accomplish in the morning on that part, And so all of this ends up playing together where you can say, hey, I have choices to make, and let me design it based off of an understanding of how I'm designed. And I feel like that's really the opportunity that we have. We build roadmaps for people using their genetics and their other data. And I feel like that's just, that efficiency is going to be so great for you. And we see it consistently in so many areas, including how you can optimize time in your zone of genius, in terms of, hey, I used to do more, like for me, I used to work out first thing in the morning, but I'm so much better in my writing and my work in the first thing in the morning. So now I shift when I have caffeine and when I'm going to do my workout, which will be right after this. So that, I get it all in on that part, and it gives me a bit of boost of energy, for the afternoon to do calls or, things like that. So this really is about human optimization and performance optimization, which doesn't, as I said in the beginning, bifurcate you into what do I do for business? What do I do for athlete? What do I do for personal? It, combines them all together.
Yeah. And as I'm saying that, I got this vision of being in your, your business day, whether you're, flying that day or whatever, you're crazy busy, but to actually be able to have confidence in your day, to know that confidently make a decision about what you're going to, I mean, even if you're in the airport and you have to go by one of those kind of convenience store things, you can actually stand there and confidently make a decision about something that you're going to pick of the options based on what it sounds like you're actually helping empower people to be able to make those decisions confidently. Or like, how many times I think back to like those work lunches, wherever you're staring at the menu, like, what the hell am I going to eat that's not going to make me sleepy in an hour, give me indigestion?
Totally.
So again, I think that it's like a gift, I think, to have that confidence to figure out, just to make those choices, as you were saying. It comes down to what choices you actually make, have the knowledge.
Yeah, and we do it in business all the time, right? It's like, we're juggling all of these things. And sometimes people are to me are like, oh my God, Ashley, your business life, you're doing this and you're doing this or whatever. I was like, by design. I hate monotony. I am not good if I woke up and every day was the same. I'm like, now my dog every day better be the same, because he's like, oh, we better be going to the beach and playing in the ocean and going hiking before you do anything else. So I do like, some people have that hashtag butt first coffee. Mine is butt first nature, just because my dog is like, we're getting into nature and it's so good for us, on that part. But I'm not adding a wake up and meditate. I do a bit of yoga, et cetera. But, in terms of scheduling that. But when I love so many of the ones that you were talking about, because like, I know which airports, so like, for example, if I'm flying into Seattle, I go to the airport early because there's this place that I love to sit, have a coffee. And they have great food. So I eat the food there. I don't care what class I'm flying. I still will eat the food somewhere else. I sit down. And then I get on the plane and I'm caffeinated. And so I've got 3 power hours where I've got nobody interrupting me, maybe 5. I might watch a movie or a basketball game and do some work. It's like these kinds of things, and you design it. Or one of my other favorite tips is to go somewhere absolutely delicious, especially if I'm traveling or I'm at home and it's a favorite, and then get another entree or appetizer or bring my leftovers for the plane, because I want something totally delicious, et cetera. I did get called on that once by one of my dear friends who's a dietitian, and she was like, I know you think sardines are delicious, but you bringing them on this train is totally inappropriate. And I didn't even know. Like, I was just sat there. She was like, are you the kid that brought tuna to school? And I was like, I probably was. I never thought about anyone else. Like, to be honest, I was so happy what I was doing for myself. So there are moments where you have to, and I've also noted, like, when I bring something really delicious, or this is a funny one, I always travel with digestive enzymes and magnesium. Like, I have my travel, supplies.
Yeah.
And so now I travel with quite an abundance because the number of times that I'm actually helping the flight attendant out where they're like, oh, like, could I have that? Or, and I'm like, yes, but I'm not prescribing this. And if, I'm like, et cetera. And once I actually was helping the pilot, he was like, oh, just, that meal. And I was like, okay, I want you feeling good on this flight, that kind of thing. So, yeah, like when we have strategies and choices, and by the way, I'm so not perfect. This really is about the pursuit of better. But I also own when I'm not perfect. Why some of the reasons I have the digestive enzymes are like, stick a really like good, poor quality, junky thing in front of me. And depending on the day or the moment, I might have that. So then this is going to help my system at least operate a little bit better. So I think it's good for us to be able to note those things. And of course, it's like, obviously I'm going to argue in favor for it. Here's my thing is I just feel like don't invest in something if it's not personalized. I just would rather that you actually are just saying, I'm not trying to improve my health if I'm not doing it in a personalized way. Cause you're wasting resources. And I'd rather not have you feel like you or I feel where it's like, I've tried that. It's like, let's stop that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad that you also, I'm going to dip back for a second because you went a little bit further into explaining personalized, to like the air quotes personalized, that's also often marketed as personalized, being different from truly personalized. There's actually, and I don't know you have this in your market, but in our market, Kaiser Permanente has a really great commercial about personalized care. And I heard it at the radio one day when I was driving. Yes, I'm dinosaur. I listen to the radio.
I love you. Me too. Yeah.
But I actually sought it out. I've seen it on TV. I've sought out the commercial and seen it because it's literally saying, it's like going through someone's daily life and it's saying like, but is it really personal to you? So again, I think as the audience is listening to this, I think it is that added question of if it says personalized, let's ask ourselves, is it truly is? And if it's not, there are ways to get it truly personal.
And that's why I want to come back because your example of the vegan is a great one. A lot of times with vegans, if somebody says that I call it plant monogamous, but if you've been a vegan for any period of time, somebody be like, oh, you need B12, you need calcium, and they go through this list. And they also make the assumption with vegans that you get in a lot of fruits and vegetables and spices. And so you probably just don't need to be talked at all about plant sources. Well, there's such an array, within vegans, and how your digestive function is really important. But actually, like your B12, yes, it may be a nutrient that you're not getting in, but the form and how you get it in, and also your genetics, how your body processes B12, that's going to be super important, especially if this is something you're going to pursue for any length of time. And then you may actually get sufficient calcium, especially if you're choosing non-dairy, like milk options and things like that are fortified. And if you're getting enough calcium in, you may not be getting in enough magnesium. Said differently, if I start to supplement calcium, I may create a greater gap between calcium and magnesium. So if somebody says they're vegan, then I want it to be like, okay, but what's Shauna's vegan? Like we just need, if somebody's keto, great. It's not my job to tell you you can or can't be this. Like I can just tell you, hey, here's what Ashley's keto would look like at this moment in time. And that's what we're able to do. And some of the examples of things that are sold as personalized that just aren't are, in terms of like if there are vitamins that you might be purchasing and they ask you to fill out a test and it's like, am I vegan? Am I this, et cetera? Or, and I'm going to take this one step further. There's a vitamin company that they take your blood and then based on your blood, they recommend your supplements. First of all, they're not asking any questions about your food. Hello? It's just alarming to me. And they are like, oh, our dietitians evaluate your blood work. They're not evaluating your food. And then if you're low in iron and you start taking iron and you're making that off of a 1 or 2 lab decision, you could be so wrong and really missing some very important things. And also not know, like iron deficiency anemia tells us like that's like a starting point from which I want to, explore many other things. So I might still ultimately have you take an iron supplement, but I also may be optimizing your digestion. I may be looking at inflammation. I may be like all of these other things. So those are examples of things where they're not personalized. One of the ones that I will pick on, like until they stop selling it, are these tests that you do a poop test and it tells you like, hey, are you intolerant or, to these, or even allergic to these foods? Well, most of the time you come back intolerant or allergic to something that you're eating all the time. And so then the ads are like, I didn't know. And it was almonds. And now I stopped eating almonds and I feel better than I have. And I was like, for an hour, maybe. But the issue is, all it told me is that your digestive system is irritated. That's so impersonalized. You knew your digestive system is irritated. An irritated digestive system is going to respond as irritated when something comes into it. And if the same thing comes into it with regularity, it's just telling us that. So I don't even typically use, tests like that until I've actually calmed somebody's digestive system. That's what our digestive tune-up program does. And then I may test certain things. Or we may be able to identify, off the bat, like, hey, here's something with histamine, or here's this other issue going on. So these things that are out there, and the argument, because they come across my desk every hour of the day, the argument is, well, they're so much better than the medicine that's totally impersonalized. Absolutely not. Like, you deserve better on that part, especially if if anyone is asking you for $1, I want you to be able to answer that they know about everything to do with your nutrition and your lifestyle choices, and as a result, know exactly why you should be investing that dollar. Otherwise, find the personal trainer, find the mental health practitioner, find the nutrition, practitioners like ourselves that can come in and provide you something that's truly personalized and can direct your investment to the right tests, to the right supplements, which, by the way, should never be on supplements for longer than 90 days without reevaluating whether or not they're the right supplements. Like, come on, people. Like, life changes. Like, don't go on a supplement for 5 years and be like, oh, I wonder, like, you've changed a lot in 5 years, or your system has. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm actually so glad you said that, because a couple of times during this conversation, you talked about at this time. And every that it's like, I had this exclamation point happen for me. And it's so important, because whether it's, me, like as a woman at this stage of my life, do I need more rest or that, or is my sleep different? And again, it's like, everything you're saying it, I'm leaning into it, because I think, I think other people who have children, and if at that point, whether it's a woman or a man, I think like your sleep is going to be different. So how you show up during your day is going to be different. So
or a puppy, right? Like your puppy, or a puppy versus a dog. Like, yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
So these are all just great things, I think, that and thank you for giving us that knowledge about, again, if you're, as you said, you've been on it for more than 90 days, reevaluate. Again, remember, we and the audience can remember, we don't have to do with all of this evaluation on our own. Like, I am a professional in certain areas of this, in the world, right? Professional business person in marketing, partnerships, coaching, consultation. I am not a professional in nutrition. And so again, it's like, yes, of course, that's why it's been puzzling to me over time. And I've tried and failed, air quotes, as you were talking about earlier, at so many things. So I want to ask you a couple of things where we go, and be sensitive of time. Ashley, I told you that I could totally rabbit hole this topic. And by the way, you said Peter Attia.
I love it. Yes.
So, folks, if you're listening, I'm holding up this book, Outlive: The Science and Art of Longevity. And I think you mentioned him a few minutes ago. And this book is fascinating. And how people are predicting, like us living longer, and I love the part that they talk in there about, which is exactly what we've been talking about, optimal performance, which is, it's not just living longer, it's living better longer, I think is somehow what they say. So again, I think just saying that here, I had this book out on my desk, and then you mentioned his name, and I was like, wait a minute, oh my gosh. So really good book. So I want to ask you your take on a few things.
Okay.
Your take on coffee.
Oh, take my coffee. Now, here's the thing. So much of the world's coffee is grown really poorly. And then what's done to that coffee is also, so remember, coffee has acids in it and active compounds. And so depending on how we roast it or over roast it, it grows. So depending on what herbicides, pesticides, depending on how the people are treated, there's a lot to consider. So if you're consuming coffee on a regular basis, it's worth investigating the quality of that coffee and seeing how it aligns with your particular body. Now, the second part is, we all have detoxification systems, and our genetics show us how efficient our detoxification systems are. And then things like medication use and other things can impact our detoxification system. And so if you're somebody where that's overloaded or insufficient, or, like there are things going on, then less coffee, or, looking at the type of coffee, or maybe even looking at other sources of caffeine can be beneficial. And the final one is, if you really actually don't love the taste of coffee and you're using coffee as a vehicle to get in flavors and things that are more like ice cream or chocolate, just go for the ice cream and the chocolate and skip the coffee on that part. But, as somebody who's a super slow metabolizer of caffeine, I just use it really strategically. So it's 1:00 in the afternoon. I allow myself one shot of espresso and before, with some outdoor activity, and I have that at about 5:36 in the morning, and I'm still here, and I'll be still like this from an energy standpoint at about 6:00. So you really do have to look at its impact on your particular sleep and, age related, and any anxiety or, any heart palpitations, any of that. So it's a longer answer, but there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm asked about it because, again, how many people do I see in the business world who are living on coffee?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
there's been times when I want to, but to your point, it's like, I know I can have 2 cups of coffee, a cup of coffee in the morning. If I have it in the afternoon or anytime after, my stomach is like, yeah, no, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
So again, there is this element of, and I'm sure there's all the reasons why. And
I think it's like, just because you brought up the business part, I also think how we show up in meetings is really important to us. And one of the things that I actually had when I stopped having any caffeine, which I did for a couple of years, I got such powerfully positive response from the people that I was teaching and working with, where they were like, Ashley, I think you're natural caffeine. I can't follow you. Like, you are like up here when you're caffeinated. And so I also recognize that when I have caffeine, so it might be worth evaluating also, hey, like, do I not have coffee in a meeting where I'm trying to connect more closely with my colleagues? Or maybe if I've had caffeine, I might need to go take a walk with a worker, with an employee, if I'm going to have a tough conversation with them. And for some of us, it helps us focus. But for others of us, it may put us too much in our brain and not allow us to have that sort of brain-heart connection, which may make our interactions with other people professionally be a little bit challenging. So it's really worth evaluating your business performance, not just where we're like, oh, it's great for fat burning, or I can run faster with it on the athlete side. Yeah.
No, I love that you said that, because again, it comes back to what I talk about so much, is like the impact that we're making, and having that awareness of what is the impact on that other person. Sometimes I've caught myself a few times. I'm talking to someone and I can feel myself like talking faster, more loudly. And I will literally pause and say to the person, you know what? I have had too much coffee today.
Yes. So, 1,000%.
That awareness of the impact that we're having on other people is so important. We do editing. So can I keep you over a few minutes?
Of course. Just a couple. I have a 1:00, but that's totally fine. Yeah.
Okay. Just a few minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so coffee makes me also want to ask you about something that I see showing up in coffee a lot, especially lately. And so the topic, and we're trying to make it short because we don't have much time left, is functional mushrooms. So everywhere I turn, it's like functional mushrooms, just same as I want you to take on stevia. Stevia in everything.
Sure.
And so how are we supposed to navigate, and like, what are your thoughts about those?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, it's always personal. So that's it's always personal. And then the other part should always be, remember that marketing piece. It should be about the quality and what I'm trying to achieve. The majority so first of all mushrooms are functional. It's like calling water gluten-free. Like, this is just dumb. Like, so let's look at, no, but I mean, this not you, this is a category. So let's look at the function of mushrooms, right? And so they just provide different functions. And so they can be phenomenal. The quality is really important because mushrooms are bioaggregators. They're taking from the soil toxins and things like that. And so that can be pretty problematic if we don't have, good quality on that part. So that is important for us to pay attention to. So Getting them in a powdered form and adding them to your coffee may be beneficial, but it may not be the amount or the form. So first of all, I love turkey tail. I take lion's mane. I have very targeted things that I use, and I have them at different also points in the day strategically. But very rarely do I find that a product that I would put into my coffee is actually going to provide the amount and also have it at the time that's what I want. Like it could be, but it's rare. So I look at the quality, I look at that, and then the other part with adaptogens is, on the one hand, and many of these mushrooms are adaptogens, they help your body adapt it favorably. So your physique, body adapt in a situation. Well, again, that timeliness you may need for a period of time. Say I'm trying to recover from a highly stressful time period. I may need certain adaptogen support, but I may not need it ongoing. And if we always use all the tools in our toolkit, we run out of tools to use when our toolkit needs something different. So I don't often recommend like a blend of all these mushrooms, at one time, et cetera. So and we do have a guide on medicinal mushrooms that we can share with people. And, we're always happy to have you kind of be coached through that on a plan. Now, sweeteners are a horse of a different color, and that would be a 2-hour conversation. I'm going to cut to the chase on sweeteners. So we have a sweet taste bud, and if it is an overdrive, that's indicating to me many different things could be going on. I could be overdriving it with what I'm taking in. I could have digestive issues, and my body could be calling out for more sweet. I could have other health-related issues, and my body is calling out for sweet, et cetera, on that part. It could be fatigue. It could be emotional. There are reasons that we call out for sweet. So satisfying our sweet taste bud, if it is appropriate, is great like that. And we want to do that. The issue that we have is that both the nutritive and the added sugars and the non-nutritive sweeteners are doing something that are additive to our body. They're not coming in by way of, giving us, especially in the non-nutritive space, they're not giving us actually nutrients there. So those stevia, monk fruit, et cetera, they all are more sweet than, say, the apple that's in nature. Yeah. So they have a tendency to amp up our sweet taste buds. So less is going to be better. Recent research has actually shown that in healthy individuals who are not consuming these, when they consumed, whether it was stevia or the artificial ones, and it was only stevia because stevia was tested, monk fruit was not tested, but would fall into this category. They alter your oral and gut microbiome, and they can affect your glycemic control. So if you're trying to work on digestive health, and this was at normal levels of intake and in just 2 weeks. So for me, what I look at with all of these is, hey, if I'm in optimizing performance, in this part, there may be things that I use to kind of help me like enjoy and, et cetera on that part. But if I'm having it on a consistent basis, and I'm also trying to improve my gut health or, or any of these other things that are so important, I'm kind of washing my floor with dirty shoes. So they're like, in that regard, less is better. Look at the quality and understand what your particular body needs. And the final piece that I'll say with that, it actually kind of goes back to where we started the whole conversation, is that we're learning more about hormones like GLP-1, which is that, what's in that Wagovy, that Ozempic, or the mimic, the version of it. And understanding how these hormones, especially in our gut, drive things like blood sugar, weight management, satiety, appetite regulation, et cetera. And so when we don't take care of our digestive system and we do these other things, we're just going to make it harder for maintaining the health that we're working so hard to achieve. So there are more efficient ways. And at the genetic level, some of us, there's the genes that I refer to. There's the dessert gene, there's the clock gene, there are snacking genes, there are genes for even things like our GLP-1 receptors. So if we have inefficiencies there or challenges with our genes just because our variants show that they're more slow than somebody else, then that's going to say to me, hey, you're probably somebody that needs to be more careful about this than somebody else on that part. And so you can get good guidance to personalize it rather than have me sit here and say, don't have stevia or do have stevia, which is not an answer I would ever give.
No. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the time that you have spent with us today. You are so incredible. I'm so grateful to have been able to follow your evolution and for all you shared with us today. And so I always ask this of guests because we do cover so many things. I think I want to know your answer to this, but what do you want to make sure that the audience takes away from your episode today?
Yeah, don't invest unless it's truly personalized.
Yeah,
It's easy.
absolutely. So I don't know about all of you, but I am charged up by this. I'm more interested than ever by what you're doing. And so I'll make sure that all your resources are available to people when we post this. So folks, let's stay committed to ourselves, our optimal performance, and seek guidance where we need it, and don't think we know all the answers ourselves. So,
or that you ever need to know the answers. I don't want anyone to feel like they think they have to know the answers. I don't know all the answers, but let me go figure it out. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. All right. Have an awesome day, Ashley. And everybody have a great day. See you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.